Hey, there we go. There we go.
Oh, all
Okay.
right, all right. I made it. I made it.
Wow. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, that was ridiculous. I just want you all to know that was like the fourth time I turned it off the live and turned it back on. It was pretty ridiculous.
What's up,
Anyway,
man?
what's up, man? Hey,
What's up?
so
Besides the fact that they're trying to shadow ban us. It's the government trying to
I'm
shut us
telling you,
down. They don't
I'm
want to hear the
I'm
truth.
telling you, they were hindering us from being able to do what we do, man. They were like, man, they were like, yo, these guys, there's no way you can have these two people who don't look the same, who don't believe the same, having real conversations. That's not acceptable. We
Yeah,
can't allow that.
yeah. Fuck that, man. You don't want to let that on. If you let
Yeah, how
everybody
dare
see that,
you?
then they'll think that the government's the problem, not us.
I know, right? How dare you promote unity and diversity of thought? What the heck? That is ridiculous.
Two men sitting down and disagreeing and not
Right.
being upset about it.
And,
Oh
and
no.
then talking about the open corruption and things. How dare you? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
oh.
But yeah, hey, so ladies and gentlemen, we are officially here. We are live. Big news. My man Zero Foxtrot is back in the good old US of A,
For
feeling
now, yeah.
good. And
Thank
I mean,
God.
this you all, if you didn't know, he was over in another land doing wonderful, fun, and exciting things, you know what I'm saying? Supporting all the things that you love and hold dear. And so he is back and in full effect. It is good to see him. You know what I'm saying? We got my boy Renard trying to jump on the live in a minute, man. Hey, stay live. We'll have you jump on in a minute, man. We're gonna talk about some content and things like that. So it's good to see everybody. Hope y'all are doing well. What's up, man? How's it feel to be back?
It was good, bro. Just trying to navigate the whole, my life.
Right. Life, life be
Just
life. Right.
trying to do life better, and you just kind of sometimes you feel like no matter what you do, like life just kind of kicks you in the nuts, and but
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Yeah.
So, um, I'd say it's so far, 50-50 on being successful. Um,
Yeah. No, I got you. I mean, I feel you. Life be life, and as they say, um, as I tell everybody, keep your head high and your heart strong, man. Every day. You
hey,
know.
you live and you learn.
Yeah.
Uh, you live and you
Yeah.
learn, basically it. But so you sent me some good material earlier. I went through all the little reels you showed me. A few of those things I have seen. And obviously, like, I got some thoughts about it, which
Right.
is the whole point of our show. But
Right.
I think a lot of it is it's all really connected when you really think
Right.
about it. The corruption in the world, everything that's going on. One of the things you sent me was the mask. The guy talking about the masks and how ineffective they were,
Right.
um, and just we kind of figured that out years ago. Though
Right.
they had started talking about those masks right at the beginning.
Right.
Now, even though I am a paramedic, I wasn't here during the pandemic. I was overseas, so
Right.
I didn't ride in an ambulance or anything like that. And just talking to people, which is crazy, because you get two different sides to it. You have the people that are still sold on the fact of the fear, and then you have the other people that were like, no, really, it's not that it wasn't that bad. It's just that it wasn't as bad as they made it out to be.
Mhm.
And I stand by the belief that if COVID was as deadly as they made it out to be, there would be a shit ton more paramedics, nurses, first responders that were dead. They would have been dying in droves. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Because they were the first people on scene. They weren't wearing the proper PPE, especially in the very very beginning. But we don't have
Right.
the numbers just don't support it.
Right.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, and
saying?
then you had the report that came out that and I think I mentioned it about I think his name I think Jake Tapper, one of them on CNN or somebody. He even came out and was like, "Yo, this report's come out that said 40% of the numbers have been falsified or overinflated or were not accurate." And I think it's a tough situation to be in because you have people who legitimately put it like this. You have a good portion of people who just don't know. And for those who are wondering, there's a reel that I sent Zero Foxtrot, and I'll post it on my story. Essentially, there was a reel that I came across where there was a guy, he's a medical professional, and he took like five of the surgical the masks that everybody's wearing. He took like five of them and he put them on his mouth, and he showed, and he wanted to show. He did an experiment to see whether these masks were actually as effective as they say they were. And so he put on about 5 of them, and then he went and blew on some glasses. And the reality, and the glasses still fogged up. The mask with 5 layers, 15 layers of coverage, still didn't stop the air particles from getting through the mask and fogging up his glasses. And so it makes you wonder, it makes you think, makes you raise questions like, okay, you know, how effective is this mask thing, and is this really about medical protection, or is this about governmental power and control? You know, it makes you raise a lot of eyebrows about how much should the government be involved in our safety. And like I brought the question up, you know, a while ago, I think at the beginning of our show a long time ago, they asked, you know, is it the government's? I asked, is it the government's job to protect the people, or to provide an environment for the people to protect themselves? You know, and you wonder, what is government overstep and outreach? Because I mean, an overreach. Because when you get in a situation where, like, okay, I know people who are firmly in support of masks. I know people who are in between. They're like, well, I don't really believe in the mask, but if it makes other people comfortable, I'll go ahead and wear it. Not that big of a deal. I know other people that are vehemently against masks, like, yo, this is crazy. This don't make no sense. And then from the little bit of research that I've done and the things that I've read, it seems that the masks are not. And matter of fact, the government themselves have even said, have come out, the World Health Organization, all of them have come out and said that the masks are actually not effective, but yet they're still pushing the mass mandates and things like that. And I think that's a little bit of a contradiction there. So we gotta, as the people, we have to come to a place where I think we have to decide, like, what are we really doing here? You know what I mean? What's really going on? You know, when medical professionals are coming out and saying that this is not scientific,
So
like, you have, yeah,
I think what it comes down to is it comes down to you have mass medicine, and then you have individual understandings of medicine. And in the world of, if you look at like the Japanese culture, you know, they wear masks when they're sick on a yearly basis because it's a respectful part of their culture, and they think that it lowers the risk to people that are at risk for that, you know, for the flu or whatever that's going on, SARS, whatever they got going on in Japan at the time, right? When
right,
it comes to COVID, we did these lockdowns, we did these mask mandates, and almost from the very beginning, people were disproving everything that, not everything, but a good portion of what they were saying was just blowing smoke up people's asses. They were just spreading fear, and they were trying to get everybody to essentially police each other, is what it really
right.
looks like to me, because the government didn't have to do a lot. They just had to make you feel like there was two sides of the aisle.
Mhm.
They had to make you feel that fear was a virtue. And that's essentially what it comes down to. They made fear into a virtue. And if you weren't fearful, you're not a good person. You don't care about
Right,
humanity. You
right,
don't care about your
right.
partner. You don't care about, you know, the people around you. I think that is probably the biggest disservice that they did to us, was they created yet another nail to drive into the division of the people of our country, or just
Yeah,
people around the world in general.
right. Yeah, you know, it's interesting because as I walk through all of this, you know, and having, and it's interesting because I've actually been, you know, I went to the hospital for my grandparents, you know, during this situation, during all of this going on, things like that, and I remember being in the ward. And I remember we sat in the emergency room for like 13 hours. You know what I'm saying? And but it wasn't really like packed like that. Like, I'm in there, but I mean, mind you, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not back there. I don't know what beds are being used. I don't know any of that stuff. But I know my grandparents were in there. We were in there for like 13 hours, you know, and, you know, they came in, and when they finally got taken back, they got tested or whatnot. And they were saying that, oh, you know, they both had COVID or whatnot. And I thought it was interesting because, so my grandmother, she comes home, and, you know, my grandfather, you know, he actually had less symptoms and was just chilling. You know, he was just kind of like a little under the weather, you know. And before you knew it, all of a sudden they're standing there admitting him, and everything's going bad. It's like kidneys and all this other stuff is going crazy. And I'm just like, okay, uh, okay, what's
Why?
happening here?
Yeah.
Why is it that all of a sudden this is happening? And what was interesting was that at one point, at one point in the whole process, he was the one. So this kind of takes it to another level, but he was the one patient that was not on a ventilator. And they were saying that he was actually the most stable patient that they had. And I thought that was very interesting because a buddy of mine who's also in medical, he was saying he's a paramedic and did, you know, nursing and things like that. He was saying, man, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's something else is going on here because he was flown out to Texas to go help support the overwhelming, cases. He went there and was like, bro, ain't nobody out here. You know what I mean? Like they said, he was saying they had like 2 or 3 patients, every couple, like every week or something like that. And there's a lot of questions that are raised, like what do we do in a situation where as more information is coming out and it's becoming very more and more clear that there's something greater afoot here. We can't avoid the fact that there is something greater than just a new sickness, a new illness. Like there's something more here. When you see the connections between Pfizer and Moderna, you see all the BlackRock connections, you see the billions of dollars that was generated through this pandemic. When you see the fact that we say things like trust the science, but when the science doesn't go along with the agenda, it's called anti-science, or it's called faux science. Or when you see all of these doctors that are coming out and being blacklisted and losing their licenses and losing their practices because they're coming out saying that, yo, I don't know what they're talking about, but I've been doing this for 20 years and you can treat this and this and you don't need this and this is crazy. And then now we're 2 years past the pandemic and there's even more insane information coming out surrounding this whole issue. It makes you really wonder, like, what are we really up against?
Well, I mean, from the very beginning, it was all very suspicious. I remember I was in Iraq when everything kind of went down. I remember it was November of 19, when they started having all those cruise ships, right? It was all the cruise ships where everyone was sick. And I remember sitting in the cafeteria over
Right,
there in Baghdad and watching, and I was like, you know what? Sounds like this looks like it might become a fucking problem.
right,
And it just escalated from there, and the US was very isolated, very late to the game. But I remember it was about January-ish, mid-January to the end of mid-January to the end of January, maybe early February, that it seemed like there was like 2 cases, and then all of a sudden there was cases all across the United States.
right.
It was very rapid,
Yeah,
how fast it moved across the entire United States.
right,
And so, and I really don't like using the word conspiracy anymore, because I feel like a lot of these conspiracies are proven true in the last few years.
right,
Like we've proven that a lot of these things are true that people are thinking, and they want you to feel crazy when you want to ask questions. When you just, it's not that I don't believe you. I just have questions,
right,
and if you can't answer my questions, then obviously I'm not going to believe you.
right,
And I think the first conspiracy was that, it didn't originate in China. It wasn't from the Wuhan labs. We know that there was labs in China. We
right,
know that there were labs in Wuhan that were studying these viruses
right,
or other biological agents,
right,
and that's where it started.
right,
100%. Like,
right,
you can't deny that
right.
anymore. Like, that's not a conspiracy. That's not, out in the realm of mythology anymore. So now that we know that, so was this a biological attack by just China on the rest of the world to maybe telegraph and test a lesser virus to see how fast they could spread it? And what are the reactions of everyone around the world? What is the military readiness of the countries that are most affected?
Right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying?
right,
Also, it does it go deeper than that? Is it all these countries getting together and seeing how much power can we seize if we make the people fearful enough not to resist?
right,
Because we have to admit, the first time that this happened, not enough people resisted.
right,
People got on the internet and people ran their mouths and stuff like that. And
yeah,
honestly, like, I was out of the game. I was overseas.
right,
But nobody, people talked about resistance, and there were a decent amount of people, but there wasn't an overwhelming majority that was,
right.
told the government to go fuck you. Which I think if this happens again, you will see that. I think enough
Yeah,
people
it's
are
gonna be
just
very different. It's gonna be a very different response. But what's interesting, my father brought up an interesting point. He was like, "Yeah, all right. Well, here's the thing. The problem is now that we live in a culture now that, and he's very much kind of on that type of time where it's like, listen, I don't really care. I'm gonna do whatever needs to be done, and I'm gonna keep on moving about my life. And I feel you. I mean, everybody has the right to their opinion on that. But one of the things he said, he was like, all right, when it gets to a point where you walk into a place and you don't have a mask on, and somebody feels some kind of way and they punch you in the mouth. You see what I'm saying? Now, where do we go from there? When we create such a culture and such a culture of fear to where it's like, because I mean, you think about it. I remember, so my mother tells a story about, because my family is a family of loud sneezers, okay? So I didn't get that. Fortunately, I don't sneeze like that. But my family, yo, when they sneeze, it's like earth shattering, right? So my mother tells a story about how she went into like it was a little bit after the pandemic or whatnot. It was kind of like middle at the end, that kind of thing. And I remember she said she went to the corner store and they're in there chilling, and all of a sudden she sneezed, right? So and she had no she had no mask on or whatever, so she sneezes, right? And it was
Hmm.
so funny because instead of it being, oh bless you, it was everybody in the place was like, like the whole crowd, like the seas just parted, like everybody went and ran and like hid behind the hid behind the little counter, and it was like, yo, what have we done here? Like we've created an environment where it's hostile. A bodily act is hostile. You know what I mean? It's like, and yeah, man. And like with the mandates, when you say, and I think for me, it's like if you want to wear a mask, I think for me, it's like it's your choice, right? If you want to wear a mask, you feel more comfortable wearing a mask, cool. I'm not, by no means, I'm not going to walk around and say, oh, you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to do that because I don't think that's right either. You know what I mean? I don't think it's right for, if you disagree with the mask, if you disagree with wearing masks, I don't think it's right for you to go tell somebody, you're an idiot for wearing a mask. That doesn't work. You're a commie. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that's right either. You see what I'm saying? But I
Yeah, no,
think
I feel like there should absolutely be a
right,
choice to wear a mask, especially the second time around. Like if you don't want to,
right,
the thing is, if you're at risk, you should stay home. That's that was my biggest argument, and the whole vax or unvaxxed
right,
argument that came out. If you get vaccinated, then you should be okay. And if you're not vaccinated, then you're not okay. But if you choose not to be vaccinated and go out, then you take your own life into your hands, which is what you should do as an adult. And if
right,
you are vaccinated, then you shouldn't have to worry about the virus killing you, which is
right.
what they kept saying. But then they changed their mind and they changed, the notes, and they changed, how they were proselytizing, getting, the vaccines and the boosters. And they're already starting to talk about getting boosters again,
Well,
you know.
they already approved the new vaccines to be developed. And I think, yeah, and I agree with you. Like to me, it was like when you start saying things like, if you don't have this vaccine or whatever, which we probably could get shadow banned for saying that a bunch, but I just thought about that. But it's all good. We'll work that out. But like when you start saying like, okay, um, you can't go to work, you can't go to school, you can't be in public, you can't be around. It's like wait a minute, hold on. Like that now we're getting into a whole different realm of overstep, right? Like we're getting into a whole. You're saying that I can't go work because I decided that I want to take my own chances, and I think and obviously it was framed as, well, it's not about you, it's about everybody else. It's like, but like you said, if everybody else is vaccinated, then I'm the one that's at risk.
Yes.
But then if you're saying that, well, no, you're still putting us at risk. But if you're vaccinated, then you're not at risk. Well, no, I mean, we're still at risk, but we're covered and protected. But that if you're protected, then that means you're not at risk, and that means that I am risking myself. No, that's not the point. You clearly don't care about the world. And it was like, okay, well, that's not a real argument. Like, I mean, and obviously there were the comparisons of like my body, my choice, and they were comparing it to abortion, saying like, okay, if it's your body and it's your choice, why don't I have a choice when it comes to the vaccine? And so there was a lot of different arguments going back and forth. I think at the end of the day, I think the whole idea of freedom is that we have a choice to choose whether we want to risk or not. That's the
Yeah.
whole idea. I mean, the whole idea of freedom is that you have a right. I mean, the truth is that you have a right to wear a seatbelt or not. But if you get in a car accident and you go flying out the window, the reality is that you made the choice to do that. I mean, ultimately, and you could go to a very primitive traditionalist perspective and say, yo, just get rid of all the laws and you just make your own decisions and do what you want to do. And then that could be very dangerous very quickly. You turn into the purge, you turn into chaos. Um,
Yeah, I'm not so much of a libertarian that I'm an anarchist. Like I don't believe in
right,
anarchy. I don't believe that that's a stable way for society to um, to evolve. Society has to have laws. We have to have rules, but we more than anything else, we have to have like a universal morality, right?
Right.
Um, and this is, and I'm strictly staying off of the religious path for this conversation. I'm just saying there are universal beliefs that we all have that, they go across party lines, they go across religious lines, they go across country lines. We talk about all the time. You shouldn't kill people. You shouldn't murder people.
Right.
That's pretty much universal in every culture. You're
Right.
not going to
Every
find a
nation,
culture
every
that's like, you know
country,
what,
every
it's okay to
creed.
just
Yeah.
wake up in the morning and just want to go and take another human being's life for no apparent reason, right?
Right.
So what I would say is that, to an extent, and to go back to what you said about, is it the government's job to provide us safety or provide us the means for us to protect ourselves, right?
Right.
It's both, essentially. The government exists to protect the freedoms that we have. And so if they're in the capacity to protect the freedoms, they have to protect our health. But once they fail at that job, once they've taken and used that ability to protect us, to enslave us, then we have to take that back from them.
Right. Well, I mean, you
Hands
figure, I
down.
mean, and we mentioned it earlier, like, and like people obviously, if we obviously would definitely get shadow banned, but if you bring up the January 6th event, I mean, the spirit behind that and all that craziness, but the whole idea, I mean, the Declaration of Independence does say if the government no longer serves as the people have a right to overthrow their government and establish a new one. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so that, that's a real thing in the document. Now, obviously, there's a whole nother level of logistics and what will go into something like that. But I mean, I think that yeah, man, I think that it's a very, very fine line between protection and power, right?
Yeah.
It's a very fine line. And I think where we are now, as this second wave rolls around, because we've already seen and heard, the talking about the new vaccine and this new strain that's all of a sudden appeared coming out of Canada, and you've got, them talking about doing the mandates and lockdowns potentially again. That could really, and it's ironic. Well, I won't say ironic. It's coincidental that it would be, of course, when right around election year, right around election time,
I
that
think I think
here.
I, I think I called
Well, yeah,
this last year. I think I called it
you said
last
this a
year.
bunch of times.
You
Watch,
know,
right around election time, you're gonna see a rise of COVID and all the shootings and all
shootings,
and violence and
LGBTQ,
yeah, I mean racial
everything, man.
stuff. I mean, so it's like it's sad, but we see these things happening. It's a script. It's just like a play. It's a rerun show. We see it over and over again. It's sad, and I think the real question becomes: we as the people, what is our next steps? What do we do from here? Because it's like on one hand, if we come to the place where, as you said, many of the conspiracies are coming out, and you don't want to be that guy with the tinfoil hat, but that tinfoil hat's looking pretty good right about now because a lot of these things that they were claiming are turning out to be true in many aspects.
Yeah.
You see, I don't know if you saw a side note, Russell Brand. He's been doing a lot of stuff lately. Russell Brand, I think he's like British or he's
Yeah, the
yeah,
actor. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
the actor or whatnot. Yeah, like Russell Brand, he came out, he's been doing a lot of stuff lately. He's been using his resources to do some research and he's been exposing a lot of stuff. And essentially he's his whole political mindset has shifted. Because he used to be very much progressive and very much, liberal and all that stuff. And then as he's gone on this journey of digging, he's exposed corruption beyond belief and exposed a bunch of agendas and plans and all kinds of stuff. And recently he just got hit with coincidentally just got hit with a sexual harassment and rape charge
Of
out of
course.
nowhere. Of course. And if you notice, this seems to be another trend where as soon as a certain person with influence or platform comes out and begins to use their platform to influence the people in maybe a positive way or just
Yeah.
expose truth, whether you like it or not, he begins to expose some things. All of a sudden, what happens next? Sexual assault, rape charge. All of a
It's
sudden.
it's 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 the hot ticket issue
Right.
that can bring someone that can bring a man
Right.
down almost immediately. Um, the problem with that is I think it does a lot of injustice when they use it as a weapon. It does a lot of injustice to the actual victims that are out there,
Absolutely.
because we do know that there is a problem with like human trafficking. There is a problem with sexual assault. There is a problem with rape,
Right.
right? And so when you accuse people without a basis, when you use that as a weapon,
Right.
and then you use it as a weapon and that person gets off, they beat the charge, it makes actual victims feel like they
Right.
can't win.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that's something very important. I you know, and this is going to be way off topic, but it's
Good.
something that's actually been on my mind a little bit. Talking about sexual assault and rape
Yeah.
and just men in general. Uh recently I had somebody, I had a pretty decently close friend in my life. We were talking about just men in general. She's under the belief that all men should be locked in cages from the time of 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. so
Right.
that we can't cause any havoc in the
Right.
world. That's about
Of
how
course.
uh, how,
Right.
how
Right.
aggressive she is about it.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, like it is a man's world. It's up to men to we not only create the problems, we have to fix the problems. It's like it's a duality that we have as the leading sex in the world, as the most powerful sex, but also, we're not even the majority of people. You know what I'm saying? There are more women in the world than there are men, and yet we hold the majority of the power. Why is that? That can be a whole different show. I have a whole
Right.
spiel I would
Right.
love to
For
go in
sure.
on that. But
Right.
using sexual assault as a weapon against political figures or against celebrities or against people that are trying to expose stuff does a lot of injustice to actual victims and stuff that we have out there. And so I feel like that's a really shitty way to take down your opponent or to take down somebody that you don't want to,
Right.
um,
Right.
you know, let all that stuff out there just because, it's overall, one, you're stopping the truth from getting out
Right.
there, and two, you're hurting actual victims
Right.
when it comes to that. But you're gonna, I like I said, that wasn't even one of the things that I said we were gonna see. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense because that's what they like to do. You
Yeah.
like to hit people with men with sexual assault charges. It doesn't
Right.
work on women. That's not what works on
Right.
women. That only works on men.
Right.
If you hit women with sexual assault, um, just society wise, we don't accept it.
Right.
Is it a double standard? Absolutely. Does it
Yeah.
happen? Yes, it does. Are we ever going to prosecute it like we prosecute men?
No.
No, probably not.
Right.
It's just one of those dualities that we have
Right.
in our society, and it probably won't really ever correct itself
Right.
because I feel if we do correct itself, we take away that the speciality between the
Right.
sexes. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
But at the same time, we use that as a weapon against powerful men. We use it as a weapon against celebrity men, but you can't use it as a weapon against anybody else.
Right. Oh, we got
What do
a
we got here?
super comment.
Long periods of peace and quiet favor certain optical illusions. Among them is the assumption that the invulnerability of the home is founded upon the Constitution and safeguarded by it. In reality, I gotta wait for
Oh, we gotta wait for
apparently part
the
two.
rest. All right.
Part two
Cool.
message.
Yeah. Part
Um,
two coming.
part two
But no,
coming.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. It's like the boy who cried wolf, right? So it's like if you keep crying this wolf, you keep saying, "Oh, there's a wolf," then nobody believes you when there actually is a wolf, right? And I think that what happens is that yeah, you definitely do it injustice. Because I mean, sexual assault is a real thing. I mean, rape is a real thing. Like these are serious allegations, and like there are a lot of women out there who are women and men who are living their lives holding this weight and this guilt and this shame and this hurt
Hmm.
and this pain and this trauma, and they have to carry that, and then their words lose weight because we're throwing the allegation out so frivolously, right? We're throwing it out, we're using it just whatever. And I think that we find ourselves in a position where, and what's interesting is that it's the same thing as like if you can't beat someone's argument, you assassinate their character, right? It's the same that's it. I mean, literally, it's a grand scheme of what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because if I were on the opposite side, if I was on the side of the government or whoever wants to stop the truth from coming out, I find it interesting because you're actually hurting your cause even more because when you do that, then all you're doing is making this person a martyr, and you're making people want to follow them and find out why did they get these allegations all of a sudden. If I wasn't
Hmm.
following you before, I mean, I think the same. And I tell people this all the time. It's the same thing with Trump. It's the same thing with Trump. Like whether you like Trump or you don't like Trump, the fact that the government, the world, the media, the old person in the back of the hallway, that everybody is coming after this man. Think about it. When you it says must TV, man. When you got a dude who's been indicted, he's been indicted 4 times during just this last year, and he's still the leader in running for president while simultaneously going to court. You know what I mean? Like that people are just like, yo, this dude might be, hold on now, let me see what he's talking about. Like you're making your opponent a martyr. by using all of your resources to go after your opponent. And it's the same thing with Russell Brand, or even people, people got their feelings about Andrew Tate and all that kind of stuff, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like Andrew Tate came out, used his platform, did his thing.